1920s politics. If there was any phrase that could be used to describe the ideals behind the 1920s politics, it would probably be the slogan in the 1920 election, and I quote, "Less government in business, more business in government." So we're going to see Republicans are going to take control of Congress in 1920, and Warren Harding, the Republican candidate, takes the presidency. The thing is, Warren Harding really has this genial touch that actually contrasts really favorably compared to Woodrow Wilson. He does things immediately, like he pardons Eugene V. Debs, remember, who had been put in prison, protesting World War I, everything like that, leader of the Socialist Party. He also spoke out against racial violence, so very different than Woodrow Wilson, who resegregated the White House. He is going to then go on, though, to appoint the so-called best minds to his cabinet. These are going to be individuals like Herbert Hoover and Andrew Mellon. Hoover was very much a progressive. He was dedicated to efficiency. Hoover's goal in office was to foster prosperity, make business efficient, responsive, profitable. Now, Andrew Mellon, on the other hand, had a much smaller goal. Basically, Mellon wanted to reduce taxes on the businesses and the rich. He is going to argue what is known as trickle-down economics. He's going to argue that lower taxes on the wealthy enable wealthy individuals and corruptions to increase their capital investments and create new jobs and general prosperity. And that prosperity will eventually trickle down to the working class, except for trickle-down economics doesn't work. It was ill-founded at that time, and it has been disproven over and over again since then. Really, it's called trickle-down economics because it's literally the rich peeing on the poor, not actual wealth going down. Great idea in theory. The problem is one person who can afford a yacht and all that kind of thing isn't going to spend as much money as 100 people who might go out and buy each a microwave and each a cell phone and each and et cetera and et cetera, et cetera. However, Mellon is going to still be successful in his goals. He is going to lower maximum tax rates, and the government's really helping business interests more than anything else. And so this is the less government in business, and if anything, it's helping out business. For instance, they're going to even have like a tariff in 1922, specifically there to protect industry from foreign competition. And on one hand, that can help the economy. However, this is going to be problematic at this time because while it helped American businesses, it really hurt European nations. And the reason that's so important is because you have to remember a lot of European nations had borrowed money from the United States during World War I. And so they needed to earn money so they could pay back those debts. And by hurting their industries and making it harder for them to make money, it means they're not going to be able to pay back their debts. So just kind of keep in mind, this is once again setting us all up for the Great Depression. We're going to see under Harding and his administration, we're going to curtail government regulation. Really, the Supreme Court is used more than anything else to champion business interests. It's very much the government is sympathetic to business leaders. They strike down a lot of government economic regulation. For instance, they would invalidate restraints on child labor during this time period and minimum wage law for women. And they approved all of those restrictions against labor unions. That's the other part of this, though, is all of this where the government is getting involved in business interests and for business interests are really going to lead to a lot of corruption and scandals. Harding's going to appoint a lot of friends and cronies who basically saw public service as an opportunity for graft. And so it would be things like they would give pardons and jobs to people who bribed them, and most of the time it's, businesses bribing them. One of the most famous scandals of this time was that they that some individuals within the government actually cheated disabled veterans out of their money. Yeah, we get the first cabinet officer in history to ever go to jail, Albert Fall. Harding was really appalled by these scandals when they came to light. He actually went on to die shortly after of a heart attack. Please don't listen to, there's rumors on the internet of, oh, his wife poisoned him and things like that. That didn't happen. Really, he just died of a heart attack, although I have seen it been poetically put in textbooks that he died of a broken heart because he was so horrified by his friend's kind of betrayal and the scandals and everything of his administration. So when Harding dies, his vice president, Calvin Coolidge, will be sworn in as the next president on August 3rd, 1923. Now, Coolidge may have looked calm, but this hid a furious temper and, quite frankly, a mean spirit. He supported businesses with ideological conviction. He actually openly opposed all of the activist ideals of the progressive era presidency, and in fact would try to cultivate inactivity to lower people's expectations of what they can get from their government. He endorsed efforts to reverse the progressive tax policies of Wilson's years, and a lot of his efforts were specifically on behalf of the business community. He puts a lot of business supporters into regulatory agencies during this time period, and this brings us to the election of 1924. So in this election, Democrats were a bit divided. They're going to nominate John W. Davis. The Progressive Party is going to nominate Robert Lafayette. And then Republicans were really backed by business because business was doing good under a Republican-controlled Congress and presidency. And so they're going to denounce Foyette as, oh, he's an agent of Bolshevism. And so they try to connect Lafayette with Bolshevism and communism, and you get the phrase Coolidge or chaos. And in this way, Coolidge wins. But it should be noted, barely half of the electorate voted in this election. Now, keep in mind, this is one of the first elections since women have gotten the vote, so there's a whole new constituency that's voting for the first time in their lives, basically. Now, as much as you might be going, well, what happens with all the progressive reform? Because we've had all of this progressive era movements. The thing is, reforms are not dead by this point. It's just reformers' successes are going to be fewer, and a lot of times they're going to be temporary measures, and it's just not part of the progressive era anymore, basically. You got to keep in mind, there has been some permanent changes. Now women are voting. Now women are going to win the right to serve on juries. Several states would enact equal pay laws, even if they didn't necessarily were enforced. Some women even ran for like political office. We actually see women being like mayors of small towns pretty frequently, but women gained very little after that. The problem is women didn't, and they still don't, vote as a block. They vote according to varying social and economic backgrounds. So it's not like, oh, the Republican Party could just do blank in order to gain the women vote. It's a lot more complicated than that. We are going to see some women, though, during this time period try to campaign for like the Equal Rights Amendment, but others were really concerned that it might nullify progressive laws that like protected working women at this time period. When I talk about measures being temporary, a great example of this, though, was like the Shepard Tower Maternity and Infancy Act, which is actually the first federal social welfare law ever in United States history, and it was made in 1921, but then it's repealed in 1929. So I want you to think about what themes do you see when comparing 1920s work to 1920s politics, and kind of think about, explain that reasoning.